Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Hi, I'm Stacey Piper, the host of Branding the Beltway. Welcome to the March episode, From Visibility to Velocity, Scaling the GovCon Marketing Function. I'm so happy to have our guest today, Megan Battaglia. She is the Vice President of Marketing from Thundercat Technology. Thundercat Technology is an SDVOSB value-added reseller that brings an innovative approach to solving customer problems in and around the data center by providing strategies for infrastructure, cybersecurity, and cloud transformation. Welcome, Megan. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I am the Vice President of Marketing over at Thundercat. I've been here about 9 years, so majority of my GovCon experience has been on the reseller side, but we work with over 500 different OEMs and across the entire federal government agencies and state and local as well. So we really do a lot within the public sector.
That's fantastic. Well, welcome. I'm sure that your experience in a growing firm is really going to lend itself well to this conversation. First, we're going to examine this topic from a macro lens for all of you CXOs who have tuned in, so we can hear more from Megan about what strategic considerations you should make when you scale up your marketing function. And then after that, we will talk about this from a micro lens, really targeting the in-house marketing leader with practical and tactical strategies on how to implement this. So let's jump right in. Megan, when you look at the evolution of a marketing function, like from kind of early stages where it's company-centric, messaging and basic collateral and website, to more of a customer-focused content and demand gen strategy, are there common inflection points for investing in building out that marketing capability?
Yeah, so in the federal IT space, especially for an SD VOSB like Thundercat, I think marketing maturity is directly tied to a few things: valuation, pipeline, predictability, and contract vehicle leverage. The last one is pretty heavy, especially for an SD VOSB. But I would say the inflection points are rarely about brand polish. They're more about revenue velocity, competitive displacement, and procurement access. So I think I would give two examples. Two of those would be when BD is spending more time educating agencies rather than advancing deals. And then another one is when OEM relationships are transactional. So from the BD side, I think how you can level up marketing, especially when you're trying to get ahead of the deal procurement process. I think leveled up marketing builds pre-RFP awareness via thought leadership. You educate your program managers before an acquisition strategy is set, and you position your company as a mission enabler, not just a commodity VAR. So I think if you have those three things in place for marketing, it's really going to advance BD from just spending time educating, but actually getting the deal through the procurement process, and kind of spending less time having to educate the customer because your marketing team is already doing that. Another inflection point with the OEM relationships being transactional. I think in that situation, when OEMs are viewing you as just order fulfillment, contract access, or like a small business partner for credit, rather than a strategic growth channel partner, agency access amplifier, or thought leadership co-author, that's more of a marketing maturity issue. And an inflection point would be when like the OEM pipeline is inconsistent or co-marketing funds go unused. So I think for that kind of situation, a leveled up marketing plan or to show a mature marketing function would be running those joint campaigns, producing co-branded thought leadership, positioning yourself as a federal execution arm, and then driving OEM to agency introductions proactively. I think that really positions you more as a strategic growth partner rather than just a fulfillment partner.
That's excellent. Those are really concrete examples of like signals that might tip a CXO off that this investment is needed.
Hmm.
And I also think that, you know, kind of at that early stage when you're still company centric messaging and stuff, I think that's when, you know, the brand reputation is maybe like little known, versus when you get to be more of that growth function that you were talking about with those examples, when you want to be seen not only as a market participant, but as a market leader, and then maybe even double down again when you want to be seen as the industry driver. So that's really interesting. So in the federal space, you know, everyone knows we've got these long sales cycles and multiple decision makers and influencers, and the competitive and complex procurement landscape. How should CXOs think about marketing as an operating model and not just, you know, a back office function?
Yeah, so when your marketing team is operating just as support, just as a department, that's when you're kind of in those stages of building out content or updating your website and being more reactionary rather than proactive. When you treat marketing as an operating model, you're more proactive in the market. You are um, you're shaping the market influence, you're owning your own brand authority, you're working with different media agencies and creating those relationships within your partners as well, and really influencing the pre-RFP process. I think when marketing is working directly with your BD team, your capture team, and your sales team, they're really involved in all three stages of the sales cycle. And that's when they're an extension to the operational team and rather than just support.
Absolutely. That's really good reminders. And I wanted to just kind of dig a little bit deeper on the how, like from a leadership perspective, to set this kind of a pivot in marketing up for success. What would you say it takes culturally and structurally to scale the marketing function and shift it from a service bureau to a growth driver?
I think a big thing is that marketing has to be involved in a lot more, and marketing needs to be in those annual growth planning meetings. They need to be in the agency prioritization discussions, partner strategy meetings, contract vehicle strategy. They really need to be involved in all of those processes in order to expand and to grow as an emerging technology vendor.
That's great. And I love that because like you said, that seat at the table gives them a chance to ideate, like hear what all the priorities are, but also to like come up with proactive ideas,
Mhm.
that maybe the people who were originally at the table wouldn't even think of because they're not marketers. So I love that
Mhm.
seat at the table concept and also just the integration with all of the teams, especially strategy and sales teams.
Yeah, and
That's
I think marketing sometimes gets left behind because they're viewed under sales when really they should be up next to sales as basically like the right-hand man to sales. So it is hard because it's like you do need that extra seat at the table and you have to be a part of those conversations in order to have a comprehensive marketing strategy for your upcoming fiscal year.
Absolutely. You're speaking my language because I always like to say that it's marketing's job to make it easier for sales to sell, right? We're like removing a lot of the friction that they might otherwise get. By doing that, like your example in question one, like by doing that education on the various solutions and products, et cetera.
Mhm.
So let's get down to brass tacks and talk budget. If a CXO is deciding where to invest within their marketing function, like whether it's a rebrand or building a demand gen function or investing in a MarTech stack, how should they prioritize that based on goals or maturity stage?
I think honestly, it really should align with the growth stage that they're in and also revenue constraints, such as like emerging firms should prioritize messaging, position clarity, and digital credibility to improve those win rates and meeting conversions, while scaling firms should invest in more targeted demand generation and thought leadership to kind of influence that pipeline and pre-RFP engagement. But I would say the more mature companies then should focus on really owning their space and their category and having that executive visibility to drive the larger deals and the long-term valuation. So, I mean, in the federal market, ROI is rarely immediate. It takes a long time. So I think kind of expecting results right away is a little unrealistic depending on what stage you're in. But I think it really just depends on the maturity stage. And so I would say first, like make sure your messaging is clear. Second, then really go for the demand generation. And then third, just like own the space that you're in. I would be very targeted with that rather than trying to own everything at once. Own what you're good at.
Absolutely. And I like that kind of in stages because, like you said, our impact on sales and revenue is going to be lagging a little bit because of that long sales cycle and the deal size. But even those kind of investments you talked about, they move the measurement from, activity based, measurement and ROI to actual impact based measurement and
Mhm.
ROI. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I would say just even from our example from Thundercat, like when I first started at the company 9 years ago, we were still in that emerging stage and our marketing team in general was just myself. And so we were very immature at the time. So I spent originally a lot of times like building those relationships with the OEMs and working our marketing that way and really getting a clear messaging of what an SDVOSB and a reseller does. And then as over time, as I've been building up the company, is then going in as a thought leader because you can't go in as a thought leader right away. You have to have that experience and once your brand is out there and it's visible, then you start to get the credibility and then you can kind of go on to the next phases. So you really need to know where your company is at the time in that maturity stage.
Absolutely. So when since you use that example of being in the emerging stage, 9 or 10 years ago when you started, um, how, if we look at this kind of evolution and maturity of the marketing role or marketing team or function over time, where would you say you are today and how many people on the team, et cetera? Like, I want to know kind of how fast that evolution happened for Thundercat so we can think about it in terms of, what it might look like for other companies too.
Yeah, today I would say we passed the scaling phase and we're really at a mature phase in our company. The company itself is 18 years old. So we've kind of shedded that tech startup glow and have really taken over as the thought leaders in the industry. I would say it took a while to get there. I would say my first 3 years building out marketing was really just kind of taking a hold of everything and getting that messaging secure. I would say probably over the past 2 to 3 years is when we really started taking more of a branch out there and kind of not just positioning ourselves with our OEMs, but focusing on just Thundercat and having a clear marketing strategy in place, meeting with our sales teams quarterly, building out, taking advice from them and what they're seeing in the field and helping to create that strategy with all of our teams, with our BD team, with our capture team. It took a few years to get to that point. I think a couple years ago, we did a capture training and every single department head was in that capture training. So we could all know how we can be a part of the capture process. So I think that also helped kind of catapult the proactiveness, like I was talking earlier. So rather than being reactionary, we are now in that proactive stage.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's really helpful to see kind of just, you know, it's it's not a once and done. You need to keep iterating on it and keep
Hmm.
building and evolving over time. So it's good to hear that kind of timeline as a real case scenario so that everyone listening knows that it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it takes about 10 years to really get something good in place. I finally feel
Absolutely.
comfortable with it.
I love that. Excellent. Well, listen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the same topic from a micro lens for all the marketers who stick with us for the call. This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and Orange Slices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, un-agency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. Orange Slices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with Orange Slices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit orangeslices.ai. Welcome back to the March Branding the Beltway, from visibility to velocity, scaling the GovCon marketing function. We are with Megan Battaglia, the Vice President of Marketing from Thundercat Technology. For the marketing leader who may be a department of one, like when you first started at Thundercat Technology, what are the first practical steps to move from that reactive, like service bureau tax execution, to more strategic growth-oriented function?
I think the biggest thing, because you can't, especially as one person, you cannot do it all. So my advice would be really focusing on that account-based marketing and take on 1 to 2 strategic accounts at a time and really plan out a full comprehensive strategy for those accounts. See what works, see what doesn't, and then expand and scale from there. Because as one person, there's going to be multiple phases during one campaign. And if you're trying to grow every single account at the same time, it's just not practical. So I would really, that's when you need to be meeting with your sales leaders, your sales team, be like, where do we see the most growth in our customer base? And then how can marketing help that? And then focus on those 2 accounts and go from there.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love the idea of like test cases or running pilots, et cetera, so you can kind of make it work really well before you try to scale it.
Hmm.
So let's talk about surge and skill gap fill, right? Like if you are a department of one and you're trying to build this muscle, where does it make sense to outsource support or bring in vendors or media partners? And when should those tasks and capabilities stay in-house?
Yeah, so I think obviously messaging needs to stay in-house. I think because you know your company's bread and butter, you know how the sales reps are wanting to go to market. So that type of marketing I would stay in-house, but where it makes sense to outsource is really when you need to amplify your messaging and your voice, and you don't have access to those tools or databases to really get in touch with your customers and the masses. So that's where I kind of used outside media agencies when we needed like a webinar execution. I could go to them and be like, hey, we are targeting DOJ or FBI, and this is the sales rep that's involved, and this is what we want to talk about. Can we use your platform and can you push out to the databases? And then kind of drive demand generation from there. I think that's where it really makes sense to outsource. For project management, there's a lot of marketing consulting companies in the industry that can really help manage different campaigns and things that you have, especially if you're a team of one and you have a lot going on, but you're still owning that messaging, you're still owning that thought leadership. And so I think there are different ways you can outsource to kind of help with the execution, but you're still driving the creative and thought behind it.
That makes a lot of sense. And definitely, I see what you're saying about owning kind of that brand tone and voice when you do have an in-house marketing person.
Mhm.
So, and I love the fact that, save the investment for the marketing technology till after you build the muscle and prove it out and see what works,
Mhm.
and lean on those federal media partners that have such high traffic and such solid brand reputation to implement those lead generation and big content syndication campaigns.
Yeah, I think they definitely work. And as I was a team of one, I definitely leveraged a lot of those relationships and outsourced a ton at first. And then you also kind of learn from those people too. And it helps when, as you're building out your team, you can recognize where the gaps are and things that you need to fill because that's what you were outsourcing.
Absolutely. So as the marketing matures, KPIs evolved. We talked a little bit about that from the strategic level. We go from followers and impressions to things more like contact forms, downloads, sales qualified leads. Without having those big, expensive enterprise level tools, how can small GovCon marketing shops start shifting measurement from activity to impact?
I think a lot of that requires, either like monthly, quarterly check-ins with your BD team, with your sales team. And because that's how you're going to learn the engagement process. Like if you don't have the tools to kind of be following along and tracking, that's when you're going to be needing to engaging with your teams and be like, okay, we did this campaign, we had these results. What have you been seeing in the market? Has this customer been reaching out to you? What can you provide us? You really are going to have to rely heavily more on your sales teams if you don't have those tools in place, but it's still definitely possible to shift from kind of just those basic impressions and followers to you're able to figure out engagement. It just takes a little bit of time and a lot of word of mouth.
Absolutely. I can see how those qualitative metrics that you get directly from sales would be really impactful and help not only direct where you go next or what you double back and, you know, iterate on, but also be powerful when you're messaging up to get that budget and get the tool, etc. I love
I think regular reviews, tying campaign activity to pipeline progress definitely helps reposition marketing as more of a revenue contributor rather than just a visibility function. So that's where I feel like that's pretty important.
absolutely. Yeah, that attribution is always, it always comes up, right?
Hmm.
If someone's trying to incrementally evolve their marketing organization this year, not completely overhaul it, but really just level up bit by bit, what 2 to 3 changes do you think would deliver the most momentum in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think the biggest one is definitely going to be internal alignment. I think, as we talked about earlier, having that seat at the table and knowing what the company strategy is, what the contract strategy is, that's really going to help you grow over, the course of the next year, essentially. And so once you have internal alignment in place, then really you should look at the process of your marketing strategy and what is needed. So, I mean, there are different things. There's the messaging clarity, there's content strategy, but I really think that kind of first, the biggest one would be your message clarity and how you're going to go to market, which accounts you're going to target, and then kind of building off of that. I think messaging is always definitely the most important thing to have figured out before you start trying to build one pagers or host a webinar, because you don't want things to get lost in translation and you really want to be able to focus on one or two specific solutions going into the next year. So I think I would focus on internal alignment and messaging probably if you want to grow.
Absolutely. And I think, to reiterate one of the things you said in the first half of this segment, I think probably the third thing, right, then is kind of picking a couple accounts to focus on and doing some pilot campaigns, right?
Mm-hmm. And not only just picking the accounts, but it also depends. Like as a reseller, we also want to know who our strategic partners are because we don't have our own solutions or products. We're going to market with our partners. And so we want to have a clear idea as here are our 5 accounts and here are our top 5 partners, and really kind of having a concrete messaging around those solutions and working with your partners and being that channel growth partner is essential to grow the business. Because if you don't have those partner relationships in place and you don't know what products or solutions you want to even sell that year, that's where you're really going to fall behind. And so you want to be proactive and have all of that planned out before that new year starts.
I love that advice. And I wanted to just ask, I know that we're, coming up on time. Is there any, example you would want to offer to marketers or any last words of advice before we wrap up?
I think my words of advice would definitely be to get yourself a seat at that table. I think that's the biggest thing out of this whole conversation, is to make sure that marketing is treated as not just a department, as an actual function to the company.
Absolutely. Do you have tips on how you made your way to the table and got that seat?
I think it definitely finding people in the company to kind of drive that for you. I mean, I worked very closely with our sales teams and I also worked very closely with our COO, and he was driving everything. And when I was like, look, this is why marketing is important. This is why we need to be there. He really was the one to help push and get me into those rooms. So I think it's very important to not only have like a mentor or an advocate for yourself at the company that is outside of your department, because that's really going to help kind of put you in the correct place.
That helps make it really tangible and actionable. So the folks listening can go ask for that seat at the table and find that internal advocate. And also, if any of our CXOs stayed on, you now know what your role is to help marketing succeed at your firm. Thanks so much, Megan. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think that we gave a lot of tips. You covered a lot, and it should really help companies grow and scale.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey, for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.